I want this to be like a national talk show. And, and I've heard people in my ear saying, hey, keep this up. You could be so-and-so. You could be the next Joe Rogan. You could be that. And then I hear that all as a encouragement. Don't get me wrong. Yeah.
This is going to hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
But the reason for leaving was more of a monetary thing where I wanted to see if I can expand, my education, go to another educational institution, make more money, and maybe try something different. I thought it was great giving back to kids in any way, especially kids with those learning disabilities. I like to use the learning disabilities. That's really what it was. Yeah. They had a little bit, of a slower learning disability, and I was able to be that person for them to help them. And that it made me feel good. And I didn't leave for any of the actual job reasons. It was more just because I was looking forward to better my career in the educational field, get more experience, and maybe teach another subject.
Yeah, but now you're in the educational field again.
Yeah.
And are you ever starting to worry that you get a little stuck in there?
My goal and my long-term outlook, and it's a terrific question. I'm kind of like looking at my clock right now with what I'm doing with my life and my career. And I've had thoughts of that. If I stay in the education system too long, is it going to take away from what I want to do ultimately in my life? And the way I'm handling that, and the kind of things I tell myself is, and I've had a great conversation with people about this, family, friends, very close friends of mine, and they kind of say, you take it as it comes, right? And it's hard to listen to that. Like, oh, well, hey, I'm going to be so-and-so. I'm going to be so-and-so age soon, Yeah. I'm looking to start a family.
That's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
You got that right.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too. Like, guys my age, so there's some guys that have great jobs, but they never bought a house yet. They're just saving money, stocking money away, living at home. And then there's some guys that already started a family, maybe have a kid on the way, or they already have 2 kids and they're married and they have their own house, bought a house with their spouse. So I'm looking at myself, I'm like, am I on the right trajectory here? Am I behind? Am I doing something wrong? And that's the last couple of years, I'll be honest, that's something that I've been looking at myself and it's kind of like an inner battle, inner struggle a little bit. Like, should I be worried or should I be happy that I have that luxury of quote unquote, what direction am I going to go? Because not everyone has that time to kind of buy, if that makes sense, right?
But you're able to do the world of media and still be in the education system. You're like that. That's a possibility. Mike and I both have this. We'd love to do this full time. We would love to do it. And if it comes, it comes. But we also got to a point, because we've had conversations about this. We don't really care. Yeah. We don't really care. As long as we can pay for the show, we're good.
In the beginning, we wanted to open up a studio in Aruba. Remember?
Yeah, well, that would be great. Remote podcast from everywhere in the world. Because Blake was asking me today, he's like, do you do Zoom? Yeah, we're capable, but we prefer not to, unless our studio opens up in Aruba.
Yeah.
Then we talked about that at the very beginning.
Yeah. Then you might have to do Zoom.
I would have to do
unless
Zoom.
Unless you're getting paying for these flights for these people to come to your studio.
We just buy a jet. But at that, listen, if that time comes, we'll have a jet.
Well, Andrew will get his pilot's license and fly.
A&J Airways. Oh, God. So while you're teaching, when did the opportunity come up to get involved once again in radio?
And how did it come up?
So I was actually, like you said, I was teaching. My mother, she owns a gymnastics facility down in South Jersey in Northfield. And she's been in business for over, I want to say 37, 38 years now, roughly. And she's
it's not the one on Tilton Road, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's off of Tilton. It's Mill Road.
Mill Road. Okay.
Yeah, Mill Road. The big yellow, looks like a warehouse, but it's been there for 40 years.
You weren't a gymnast when you were growing up, right?
No. I'm not seeing you doing the rings. You're not doing the rings or the horse. It's not happening.
Tried one class. That was
the pommel horse.
The horse got pommeled. That's what happened.
The first and the last time after when I was younger.
And I guarantee you were never a jockey either.
No.
World's tallest jockey. That's what it is.
I'd feel bad for the horse if that was the case.
The horse would be riding you.
It's like Mongo. You drive in on a bull. Yeah.
So she still has the facility, still has the business. And there was a lady that reached out to her because she works with young athletes, gymnasts all day long from ages 2, 3, all the way up to like a senior in high school. Even some adult classes as well. And she'd been doing it a long time. And a woman reached out to her and said, Tracy, I know you're in the local area. I do a show over at WOND about, nutrition and how how you should take care of your nutritionist, how you take care of your body, the ins and outs of your dieting and all that stuff, what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat. And, we hear this all the time, but it's really, just kind of listening to this lady's show. And I've actually happened to become a good friend of hers. Terrific woman, and terrific program that she runs every Sunday, I believe, from like 2 to 4. And she does something during the week as well. So she invited my mom on the show. And she talked to when they did like the background call and kind of the screening, I guess you could say, before coming on the show, kind of setting everything up. She kind of said, my mom kind of was always thinking to me. She goes, I have a son who was a college athlete. And he played high school basketball in the area. He would also be interested in your program. Not saying, if you have room for him, if he's got to come on, whatever the case may be. But she was kind of throwing it out there, kind of because she said yes to the show. But then when she thought athletic sports, she thought of me too. Mom.
You always want to give your son a bump up. Yeah.
Yeah. She had a proud mom moment, right? Anyway, the woman was very open to it. And she said, yeah, Tracy, how about this? Why don't you and your son come in together? And we'll and you guys could do the show together. So that's what happened. I went in with my mom, and we had a mutual discussion with the woman on her show about nutrition, and I actually coached camps when I was younger, like out of college in the summer. I'd come home and I'd run camps, youth ages, and we would do like basketball training for like a couple hours and stuff like that. So I was kind of giving back as a college athlete to the younger kids. And I knew what it was like being an athlete. How you have to hydrate yourself, what you can and can't eat when you're training and all that stuff, right? Even though it's hard to stay on that course nowadays.
You got that.
And I'm way off, but I got to get myself back.
And the weight doesn't stay off as much when you're older, believe me.
It takes a little more time to get it off, yeah. But so you're in there, and how did it feel?
It was in the first couple minutes. It kind of felt a little different. Like I'm like, okay, like this is what I like. I did that radio show at Stockton. It was cool being behind the mics, but now it's not really just playing music. Now I got to actually talk and speak. So the first couple minutes, I was a little a little nervous, a little bit, to be able, when she was asking me questions and am I going to sound well? How am I going to sound on the mic, right? So it kind of went free flowing. I enjoyed it. And then she actually invited me back for another show, I would say a couple months later. And this time it was just me. Sorry, Mom. But she liked you too. Don't worry.
Kick your mom right to the curb. Go ahead.
Mom is a stepping stone.
And then I had my own show with her. And it was just talking about, now it was training it went from training the young kids and my experience as a college athlete to training the high school kids as a varsity coach. At Wildwood Catholic. And then we went into what does typical practice day look like. So we had another conversation about nutrition and what am I doing with the kids and all that. So at the end of the show, long story short, she goes, I've been thinking about this, Blake. And I said, what's that, Nancy? She goes, you have a voice for radio. Did everyone ever tell you that? And I was like,
we have a face for radio. So
yeah. Yeah. I said, did anyone ever tell you that? And I said, well, I've heard it a couple times, but you were the first one to actually really kind of take interest in me when you said that, but she was like the first one to really say, you have a voice in radio. And I was like, wow, I kind of like, do I sound that good? Do I say how do I sound?
What are you talking about?
Yeah. Can I be the next David Letterman or a host show or whatever? But, I was saying to myself, wow, this is pretty cool. So she was telling me this and she goes, well, how about this? I said, would you be interested in having your own show? And I said, yeah. I said, actually, I would. Something I thought about for the last couple of years. And she put me in contact with the general manager of the show or the station for WOND. And I had a meeting with him. We set up some emails, and then I actually met with him face to face and pitched my idea to him of what I wanted my show to be about and what the name would be. Right. And and the funny thing about the name, as you know, the Big Man's Report Live, I kind of said to myself, I said, what am I going to call this show? Right. The daily roundup, or the daily roundup with Blake Rosell, or the Big Man Show, or the Big Man Show, the Big Man's Report. Wait, the Big Man's Report Live. And I just kind of rung a bell. So it all worked out, and I'm happy, and I'm still grateful to this day. And I still talk to Nancy all the time. And, we talk a little bit about the shows and how everything's going. So that's what got me into the radio station, was to have that meeting with the general manager of the station. And he liked my idea about pitching the show. And here I am today, 3 years later.
Just rings a bell sometimes. You've spoken to a lot of people. I see you spoke to Kellyanne Conway. I did some research on you. Spoke to some decent sized names. Peter Gaudio, who I'm friends with as well. Mm-hmm. He's a very generous man. Is there one that stands out on you where it just wowed you? Not to diminish your other guests. So if they're listening, I'm not diminishing your other guests.
They don't listen to the show.
Yeah,
don't worry about it.
I've been fortunate enough to like have some really cool people on, and even sometimes myself, I'm like thinking to myself like, wow, do I have this? I can't believe I have this guest on, or I'm going to have this guest on next week. Like if I'm watching movies as a young kid and I see maybe an actor on the screen that maybe I had the chance to talk to, last year or a couple months ago, I'm like, wow, it's pretty cool. I think one of the first ones what you mentioned first, Kellyanne Conway. I thought that was interesting just because. I mean, she was a big name, obviously.
Jersey girl.
Jersey girl.
Yeah, Jersey girl.
And matter of fact, she actually graduated from St. Joseph, it was St. Joseph High School then in Hammonton.
No kid.
She grew up in
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where I just taught the past couple of years, she was alumni there. I think class of '85. I think
home of Chris Tortu. Chris Tortu played at Syracuse. He was in my age range. Played at Syracuse. I think he got signed by one in the NFL.
Lou Alcindor was in my age range.
So what was specifically about Kellyanne Conway or is it Conway?
Conway.
What was so specific about her that just wowed you? Was her star power, or was it something about her personality?
Well, actually both. I was a little nervous for that interview. Like my very first interview I ever did on my first season of the Big Man Report Live, I was a little nervous, but then ever since then, it became natural, and now it's like supernatural, like it's like brushing my teeth now, and because I've practiced it, I've rehearsed it, and it feels really good to be on the air, and I'm used to it. But I had her on last summer, and weeks leading up to it, I'm like, man, I gotta get questions prepared. I mean, this woman, she's sharp.
Exactly.
She's on Fox News National 4 or 5 days a week at least. Matter of fact, I was just scrolling through the channels yesterday, and she was on in the afternoon yesterday. Everything with the elections and all that stuff. So she's busy right now, and I thought it was pretty. I just seen her on TV all the time, and I think a little bit of her star power, like you said, Kevin. And she was a big name, and she still is a big name. Very big name. But during presidency a few years ago. She was huge, doing the White House briefings and all that stuff.
She's easy on the eyes as well, which doesn't hurt.
No, not at all.
Stay focused.
And I had the pleasure of meeting her, obviously in person many times, and we were at a function together. She did a speech for and like it was called a gala function last year for St. Joe's. It was at a country club down in Haddonfield. We had a really nice evening. Got to speak with her and her family, meet her family. And I met her on a couple occasions where she used to come into Memories of Margate, as a matter of fact, Jerry Blavitz. And before I get to my next point, what I want to say about that was I remember she used to come in a couple summers in a row. She used to have the Secret Service come in with her, and these guys be dressed up like they were just random guys hanging out, right? Maybe and you weren't supposed to know who they were, but they came in, and then she would dance with her girlfriends, and I got to speak to her a couple times there as the head of security. I got to escort her in and anything she needed. So it was pretty cool to have her on my show for that regard. Like I met her, a couple years prior, but now and I didn't have the talk show yet at that point when I met her. I was still in college, but now fast forward to like 3 or 4 years later, and I have the show. I'm like, wow, this woman's going to come on my program. But the limelight of being the center of attention on Fox and all the interviews she's done, and her name in the presidency, and also the last thing I'm going to say about her was actually speaking with her. She is very, very intelligent from what I can tell. Yeah. And, obviously a lot of what the way she would present herself and the way she would carry herself, I actually had to really kind of key in and listen. I didn't want to miss something. She spoke very fast, spoke very clear, and spoke very educated. So it wasn't just all about having Kellyanne Conway on the program. Her as a person and her intelligence behind and her knowledge behind her subject and her craft was phenomenal.
Could be intimidating.
A little bit.
Certain guests bring your game up.
Yeah.
Certain guests will elevate your game. You try to match their level of engagement. It's something that's very, very hard to explain. And if some people can't do it.
Yeah.
Some people just can't do it, and that's fine. But when you get that one person, we've had it in here, you get that one person and it's engaging and stuff. You don't ever want it to end.
Yeah.
And I imagine that would be like with her.
Yeah, and it was I remember one time it was hard to get like a date because she was out of the country doing some work and stuff, and I thought it was hard to get her. So I worked it out with her administrative assistant, and I was able to book her on the show. And I'm like, wow, this is gonna be so cool. And it was there's also just like some fine line too, like with her being who she was, I couldn't just advertise or promote she was gonna be on the show every day. I had to wait till like 2 weeks out. Yeah. It had to be very particular. There were certain guidelines with that. And one thing that she said to me, which I thought was pretty cool, one of the first things she said to me when we signed on the show, and for that show, and no disrespect to any other guests I ever had, because I like everyone equally who I had on my show. Every conversation was great and unique in their own special way. But for when I had her on, I actually put on a suit. I put on like a red tie. I tried to look like, I guess you could say, I look patriotic for the occasion. And I done it all up, in a certain way. And then one of the things she said to me was, she goes, "Oh, and finally, we're glad we got to do this." She goes, "I must say, Blake," she goes, "I must say, I've never been on the small man's podcast before. So being on the big man's podcast is pretty cool." I thought that was fun.
That's a soundbite and a half that you're going to get.
Yeah.
Where do you see this radio show going? Or what's your hopes of, you want to go further? You want to bring it national? You want to bring it, like, if you had a crystal ball, where would it be?
If I had a crystal ball, down the road, I want this to be like a national talk show. And, and I've heard people in my ears saying, "Hey, keep this up. You could be so-and-so. You could be the next Joe Rogan. You could be that." And then I hear that all as a encouragement. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But that's, to get to that point, I always tell myself, stay consistent at what I'm doing. Don't get off key. Don't get off course. If one show, doesn't really have a lot of views or doesn't have a lot of listeners or a lot of positive feedback, who cares, right?
We fretted on that for a long time.
And you guys in this business too, you guys are very, do a great job at what you do, and you guys can probably attest to the same thing.
Oh,
right?
It's pressure. It's pressure. But what we learned is, instead of being, because we've heard that too, oh, you could be the next Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
We just want to be the first us. That's all we want to do. That's all we want to do.
Well, that's the one thing I was going to say too. Just be yourself. Yeah. When you start, like, this is dressed up for us. We talked about this when we started on camera. What are we going to wear? Are we going to wear college shirt? That's not us.
That's not us.
Yeah.
That's not us. I drive a 2005 Jeep with 213,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
I'm not.
You want the license plate? I'll give it out over the air.
I got it. I know it. It's not us. This is who we are.
Yeah.
I came in with slides. I took them off already. I'm sitting here barefoot.
And
that's who I am.
Right. And that's an important thing too that I always thought about. Like, I don't want to have to feel like I'm being someone I'm not, right?
Exactly.
I want to be natural behind the mic. I want to be natural with my guests. And hey, listen, if down the road I don't get to that, like a national syndicate, I never get, where I'm going.
As long as you're enjoying it.
Yeah. If I'm having fun doing it, and I could tell some pretty cool stories of my kids, 10, 15 years down the road or whatever. Hey, your pop, he had a pretty cool talk show back in the day. He had some cool people on. No way, Dad, you did? You had that guy on your show?
We talk about it a couple times. Like, I don't have any like home videos of like my mother who passed away in 2011. Like, just to hear her voice one more time, would be really meaningful to me.
Right.
Now your voice is going to be out there forever.
Yeah, your voice is going to be out there. My voice is going to be out there.
Forever.
And so when we're off this planet, so whoever our next generation is going to be able to listen to us.
Yeah.
Where can we find you? Why don't you throw out some plugs? Where can we find Big Man's Report Live first? So
I always direct people to go to even on my own show, to my Instagram page, the Big Man's Report _live. That's where I post my daily, who's going to be on the show coming up, and I do a daily outlook, a weekly outlook, I should say. I sometimes do a monthly outlook if I can book a few months in advance. So my Instagram is like my sanctuary, where I have all my posts, who I had on, and little clips to kind of like teasers, and to who I had on and who's going to be on, and that's my main source, I would say. If you want to listen to the show, if you want to listen to it live, 92.3 FM. It's in South Jersey based, obviously, so 92.3 FM. And if you can't catch it locally, if you're not in the area, you can listen to it online, digitally, which I always tell my viewers and my listeners, www.wondradio.com, and just click listen live every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. I go live. And also my YouTube channel. So if you missed a show, Okay, if you miss it, you want to. Hey, I missed the Big Man Show this week. Where can I go and get it? You go to my YouTube channel, the Big Man Show Live on YouTube. All right, and I post all my videos there weekly. After I have them, the on-air interview, I always do. I kind of do all my chop it up and do what I got to do, and it'll be on there. You know, I'll do my. You get the final product on my YouTube channel. You can see that. You know, and I always direct people where to go. Obviously, when the show's ready to be released on YouTube, if they miss it live, I always direct them when to go on, when it's going to be released, and kind of give them the update. So YouTube and my Instagram are my big things right now. I did a little bit of TikTok in the beginning. I kind of steered away from it, not for any bad reason at all. I just haven't had time to upload to TikTok as well.
It's a lot.
It's
a lot. I do them all, and it's exhausting sometimes. But I'm grateful because it's a way for me to push the show out with Mike and I and really get the word out. So Blake, we're coming to the end of this thing, and I can't thank you enough for telling us what you told us.
Thank you for having me on.
I try to end it in every way because you've taken this journey and you're immersed in the minutia. You're getting to where you really love, but there's some pains to it. What do you think all that process has taught you?
You know, you got to be able to handle adversity. I was always taught that as an athlete. I was always taught that as a student. And I was always taught that as a child, right, of my parents. You have to just take the good with the bad, right? I'm gonna have bad days, gonna have good days. If I'm at my lowest point in my life, I can't always say to myself, "This is what it's going to be like forever." So I think I have to keep constantly searching. It's teaching me that if one thing fails, it's okay. On to the next thing, right? You know, don't harp on the one thing that didn't go well, the one thing that went sour, the one relationship that went bad, the one job that maybe wasn't what you thought it was, the one friend who you thought was your friend but wasn't your friend at the end of the day. All those things you can't harp on because you know what, at the end of the day, life goes on and life is short, you know? And I don't want to sound cliche by saying that, but that's the way I truly feel. I think I have to keep look for the good opportunities, understand the bad ones, take them as learning lessons, and keep going forward. And I think that's been like what you say, quote unquote, what's my suffering? Well, you know, finding out what I'm going to do in media, how am I going to navigate this thing? How am I going to make money? How am I going to get a house? All these things is my way of internal battles, but it's not going to stop me from where I want to get at the end of the day.
Just keep doing what you love and all the rest will follow.
If you love what you're doing, you never work a day in your life.
This is the truth. Blake, thank you so much for coming in. We really do appreciate it. Another South Jersey guy in the house. I'm always proud to have them now. Always.
And this is really interesting. This is really cool to be on another show. I'm always the interviewer. Right?
It's hard to turn the tables.
Yeah,
it is.
This is actually really neat to be the one interviewed, and I really enjoyed it. So I want to thank you both again for having me on.
Now you know how the guest feels, and now you know how the interview. You know how the interviewer feels. Now you know how the guest feels. So now you get a little.
That's why in doctor school, believe it or not, that's why when you study to become a doctor, you must become a patient. It's part of the curriculum now to give a little bit of empathy.
Do they operate on each other and everything?
Yeah, well, they give proctology exams. That's what they do. That's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast, the Suffering of the Big Man with Blake Rosell. And let's think about all the stuff that we learned. Takes time to grow into your body. A turn in your career can show you your path. Thank God for mom's push. Take the good days with the bad days, but most importantly, be the first you. That's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget to join the subscription channel on YouTube. Follow us on all social media. That's Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, Clapper, all the rest of them. OnlyFans. Don't forget to follow Mike at Mike_Felice. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson. And, of course, follow the Suffering Podcast. And we will see you on the next episode.